Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's MJS recital, The Art of Jazz. Well, you might well be thinking, what does a Philistine like Jace know about art? Well, not as much as I'd like to be honest, but art is, however, one of my other passions. Like jazz, it's a big subject and becomes a lifetime study, but I came to it relatively late. I was already in my mid 40s when my daughter Emily headed off to Manchester Met to study art history. We were still living in Paris at that time, so I decided to embark on a journey really of self-education so that I would be able to talk to Emily about some aspects of art at least. Now, living in Paris meant that I had very easy access to many museums and art galleries, and so the pursuit of art knowledge became one of my main pastimes. Now, in fact, after visiting so many auctions and art fairs, I decided once we returned to the UK in 2013 to start my own gallery business, hence Gallery JKL that you can see behind me. Now, with the pieces that I bought in auction and around a dozen artists that I signed up before leaving France, we formed a pop-up gallery, participating regularly to art fairs in Cambridge, Reading, Windsor, and up here in the old Granada studios for 2 years as well, and then at the Manchester Central for another 2 years before COVID lockdown came in and killed off the art fairs for a few years. So the theme of tonight's recital then is jazz songs that are influenced by or evoke themes of art, creativity, and visual inspiration. The chosen tracks reflect the interplay between visual art and jazz and showcase how one art form can inspire another. Now, we start with Picasso by Coleman Hawkins. This was recorded in 1946 as an unaccompanied tenor sax solo and feels very much like a musical interpretation of Picasso's Cubist art. Ted Hershorn, in his biography of jazz impresario Norman Granz, says Coleman Hawkins's unaccompanied solo Picasso roars like a lion in its solitary majesty in a piece notable for its lack of easily discernible harmonic, rhythmic, or tonal themes, which really is in keeping with Cubism's abandonment of perspective seen from a single viewpoint. So here we are, Coleman Hawkins, 1946, Picasso. Yeah, now considering that was 1946, right at the outset, really, of the modern jazz period, that seems a very accomplished and very much in the vein of a modern jazz sound. So that was Picasso by Coleman Hawkins. So while we're on the subject of Picasso, let me just share this with you. There we go. So that's Jace in front of a real Picasso. That was back in the spring of 2015. And I know what you're thinking. He hasn't changed a bit. I get that. Okay. But at that time, I was working in London, down in just off Liverpool Street. And my son was working in Christie's, the auction house, just off Oxford Street. And in fact, he worked there for 8 years in total before moving on. But that day he called me and said, there's this big Picasso here that's doing the rounds, and it's going back to Christie's in New York to be auctioned off tomorrow. So today's the last chance to see it. But they were closing at 4 o'clock, so I couldn't get there in time. But my son said, "Yeah, no problem. When you just come along, I'll have a word with the security guard and get you in." And sure enough, that's what he did about 6 o'clock that evening. So I had the whole room to myself. Obviously, my son took the photograph there. And the next day, that Picasso was shipped back to Christie's in um, New York, where it sold for 179 million US dollars. Now, I didn't put a bid in that day because Sharon said it wouldn't go with the curtains, so I didn't bother. But what's interesting, it's still on the list of most expensive paintings. It's a little way down the list now. And find it. Yes, it's here. So $179 million dollars at the time, which today is the equivalent of 238 million. That was the piece, the women of uh, Algiers. And in fact, if you see that, if I flip between them, well, yeah, you can see that's the picture. Cool. Okay, so on with the show then, guys. Let me look at that. And next up is a tune I know you'll be familiar with. It's Blue in Green by Miles Davis. And in fact, it was a songwriting collaboration between Miles Davis and Bill Evans. But it's a hauntingly beautiful piece from the iconic album Kind of Blue. And it itself has often been described as an abstract painting in sound. Yeah, kind of still really evokes the period, doesn't it? And as well as the style. Well, I thought we'd just break up the heavy art lecture a little bit here and there, and use some more tenuous art and jazz connections. So here's the warm lyrical trumpet sound of Art Farmer on two tracks from his 1958 album that was called Modern Art. The personnel, of course, are Art Farmer himself on trumpet, Benny Golson on tenor, Bill Evans again on piano, Addison Farmer on bass, and I didn't realize until I researched this that Addison Farmer was Art Farmer's identical twin brother. And David Bailey on drums. I guess that was before he picked up the camera. And the two tracks are Darn That Dream and Fair Weather, Art Farmer from 1958. Yeah, what a great connection. Benny Golson and Art Farmer, the super stuff there. Okay, so around about the time that that album was cut, in fact, just before that album was cut in late 56, early 57, and just before that, the alto sax player Art Pepper also recorded an album called Modern Art. The personnel were Art Pepper on alto, Russ Freeman on piano, Ben Tucker on bass, and Chuck Flores on drums. And again, here are a couple of tracks from that album. Yeah, modern art pepper this on two old standards sounding anything but tired old standards, yeah. Well, the same year, Art Pepper recorded an album with the Marty Page Quartet called the Marty Page Quartet featuring Art Pepper. Again, Art Pepper, of course, on alto, Marty Page himself on piano, Buddy Clark on bass, and Frank Capp on drums. And the tune was called Abstract Art. Yeah, and at just under 3 minutes, you wish that was one of those tunes that had gone on for a lot longer. Okay, so that was a few from Art Pepper there on top form. Charles Mingus next on Self-Portrait in Three Colors, and as you can see, this is from the 1959 album Mingus, and is actually written by Mingus himself. Personnel on the record are Booker Irving and Shafi Hadi on tenor, Willie Dennis trombone, Horace Parlan on piano, and Charles Mingus himself on bass, of course, and Danny Richmond on drums. And the album cover design was by the Hawaiian artist Sadamitsu Fahita. Yeah, Charles Mingus with Self-Portrait in Three Colors. We'll come back to a theme of using particular paintings on jazz albums a little bit later on in the recital. But um, we had a direct reference earlier on to an artist, Picasso, around about the start of tonight's session. Here's another artist reference with a track written by saxophonist Kenny Jarrett from his 1990 album, Black Hope. Now, the track is called Van Gogh's Left Ear, which is the one he cut off. So I'm not sure why it would be of any much use when listening to the record, to be honest. But here we are, Kenny Jarrett. Yeah, Goff Left Deer by Kenny Jarrett, not to be confused with smooth jazz's Kenny G, of course. Well, probably nobody epitomizes more the blurred lines between art and jazz than Duke Ellington. He was known to compose songs with art and color references in the titles in order to tell stories. So we think of Black, Brown, and Beige, Black and Tan Fantasy, and Azure, for example. Now, Rosemary Clooney's debut studio album in 1956 was a collaboration with the Duke Ellington Orchestra on the Columbia label. The tracks, both this time by Duke Ellington, are well known. This is Blue Rose, and the very well known standard with the arty title, of course, Mood Indigo.
Since my baby said goodbye, in the evening when lights are low, I'm so lonesome I could cry, 'cause there's nobody who cares about me. I'm just a soul who's bluer than blue can be. When I get that mood indigo, I could lay me down and die. You ain't been blue, no. You ain't been blue till you've had that mood indigo, that feeling goes stealing down to my shoes while I sit inside. Go long blues.
Yeah, and on the very typical Ellingtonian crescendo, we end part one. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Part two of our look at jazz and modern art. We heard earlier on tonight Miles Davis's Blue in Green from the seminal Kind of Blue album, and we're going to start the second half with Miles again. This is Will o' the Wisp from 1960's groundbreaking album Sketches of Spain. It takes me to my school days where we had a drama teacher who was obviously a fan of that album and had us performing all sorts of choreographed moves to the tracks on Sketches of Spain. Okay, next up is an album called Portrait in Jazz. It's by the Bill Evans Trio, recorded in December 1959, with Scott LaFaro on bass and Paul Motion on drums. And if you know this album, really, the entire album is a masterpiece. It really is. And here we have two very contrasting seasonal tunes. I love that really up-tempo version of Autumn Leaves, the first track we heard there. When you hear it for the first time, it catches you by surprise because you think, "Oh, Autumn Leaves, it's going to be a waltz tempo," and then bam, it's a great album, that one, by the way, portrayed in jazz. Okay, so the color blue comes up quite often in song. Tonight we've heard Blue Rose and Blue in Green. Well, here's Black and Blue by Satchmo from the classic 1955 album Satch Plays Fats.
Cold empty bed, springs hard as lead, feel like old men, wished I was dead. What did I do to be so black and blue? Even the mouse ran from my house. They laugh at you and scorn you too. What did I do to be so black and blue? I'm white inside, but that don't help my case, 'cause I can't hide what is in my face. How would it end? Ain't got a friend. My only sin is in my skin. What did I do to be so black and blue? How would it end? Ain't got a friend. My only sin is in my skin. What did I do to be so black and blue?
Yeah. When I first discovered that album on CD, I think I just had it on repeat for about 8 months. It's fantastic. Uh, okay, so this year will be the centenary year of John Coltrane. Um, in 1963, he made an album called Impressions with McCoy Tyner on piano, Jimmy Garrison on bass, Roy Haynes on drums. And here's the wonderful After the Rain. Yeah, John Coltrane on the 1963 album Impressions. Well, we've heard earlier this evening from Art Farmer and Art Pepper, so you probably knew that this guy, Art Blakey, was coming along. And this is the title track from Blakey's 1978 album, Reflections in Blue, that colour again. Of course, Art Blakey's on drums, Valery Ponomarev on trumpet, Bobby Watson on alto, David Schnitter on tenor, James Williams on piano, and Dennis Irwin on double bass. Yeah, that track really is a sound that's stuck in 1978, I think. Like it should be the theme music to a TV cop show or something like that. Okay, so we've seen a few album covers tonight that feature an artist's work on the front of the cover. And Ella Fitzgerald used this theme quite a few times on her albums. So here we have her wonderful version of A Night in Tunisia from the album Clap Hands, Here Comes Charlie. And the painting that's featured on the front is by French artist Jean de Buffet. Now, I remember seeing one of his works in the Georges Pompidou Centre, which is the modern art gallery in Paris, and it was flanked either side by two very big Salvador Dali surreal paintings, and yet it was the Jean de Buffet that had all of the draw. You know, it pulled you in. It was an amazing portrait. So anyway, here's Ella with A Night in Tunisia, on front cover painting by Jean de Buffet.
The mood is the same moon above you, aglow with its cool evening light, but shining at night in Tunisia. Never does it shine so bright. The stars are aglow in the heavens, but only the wise understand that shining at night in Tunisia, they guide you through the desert sand. Words fail to tell a tale too exotic to be told. Each night's a deeper night in a world ages old. The cares of the day seem to vanish. The ending of day brings release. Each wonderful night in Tunisia, where the nights are filled with peace. The moon is the same above you, aglow with its cool evening light, but shining at night in Tunisia, never does it shine so bright. The stars are aglow in the heavens, but only the wise understand that shining at night in Tunisia, they guide you through the desert sand. Words fail to tell a tale too exotic to be told. Each night's a deeper night in a world ages old. The cares of the day seem to vanish. The ending of day brings release. Each wonderful night in Tunisia, where the nights are filled with peace. The moon is the same up above you, aglow with its cool evening light, but shining at night in Tunisia, never does it shine so bright. The stars are aglow in the heavens, but only the wise understand that shining at night in Tunisia, they guide you through the desert sand. Words fail to tell a tale too exotic to be told. Each night's a deeper night in a world ages old. The cares of the day seem to vanish. The ending of day brings release. Each wonderful night in Tunisia, where the nights are filled with peace. each wonderful night. Indonesia.
Yeah, Ella Fitzgerald, uplifting as always. And the theme of using artists' work on the album covers also made its way onto the songbook series. And here again is another up-tempo version, this time of that old Black Magic from the Harold Arlen songbook. The lyrics, of course, were by Johnny Mercer. And another French artist featured on the cover, that's Henri Matisse.
That old black magic has me in its spell. That old black magic that you weave so well. Those icy fingers up and down my spine. The same old witchcraft when your eyes meet mine. The same old tingle that I feel inside. And when that elevator starts its ride, and down I go, round and round I go, like a leaf that's caught in the tide. I should stay away, but what can I do? I hear your name, and I'm aflame, aflame with such a burning desire that only your kiss can put out the fire. For you're the lover I have waited for, the mate that fate had me created for. And every time your lips meet mine, darling, down and down I go, round and round I go, in a spin. I'm loving the spin I'm in, under that old black magic called love. That only your kiss can put out the fire. For you're the lover I have waited for, the mate that fate had me created for. And every time your lips meet mine, darling, down and down I go, round and round I go, in a spin, love in the spin I'm in. I'm under that black magic called love, under that black magic called love, under that black magic called love. Got me spinning, spinning and spinning around like an elevator going down to that old black magic.
Oh yeah, when you hear a track like that from Ella and you think, how the hell did she do that? It's amazing. Well, just one more from Ella, from what's probably, certainly critically, the best of the songbook albums, which is the George and Ira Gershwin songbook. The painting on the cover of this particular release is by another French artist called Bernard Buffet, and I saw a lot of his work in Paris. It's very distinctive, in fact, and when you see that, you'll understand it, the look and feel. And this is a popular song of the Gershwins, but again, no one sings it quite like Ella.
There's a saying old says that love is blind. Still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain lad I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet. He's the big affair I cannot forget. Only man I ever think of with regret. I'd like to add his initial to my monogram. Tell me, where is the shepherd for this lost land? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone who'll watch over me. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to one who'll watch over me. Although he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, to my heart he carries the key. Won't you tell him please to put on some speed, follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me. Won't you tell him please to put on some speed, follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me. Someone to watch over me.
beautiful. But I'm not sure how you get 4 syllables out of the word key. It's amazing. Okay, so I used to listen to Humphrey Lyttelton's Best of Jazz radio program. I think it was on Radio 2. And really, he introduced me to modern jazz when he played this track from an Oliver Nelson album that itself has a very arty title.
Hold down. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, and a famous lineup of musicians on that one. And that track just makes you want to reach for your dungarees and join the hoedown, doesn't it? Okay, just time for one more, folks. Talking about the Humphrey Littleton program, I remember that Humph was a big fan of Stacey Kent. In fact, I first heard her records on his show. But I once heard Stacey Kent herself in a radio interview say, if you don't like jazz, that's like saying you don't like art, thus fusing the two forms and making them inseparable, in fact. So we finished tonight on an old 1939 composition performed by Stacey on her album Love Is the Tender Trap. And I dedicate it to Dennis, as I know it's a favourite of his. And also, on the occasion of Dennis's recent big birthday, we had the thrill of seeing Dave Newton on keyboards, and Dave is the pianist supporting Stacey on this number.
Comes a rainstorm, put your rubbers on your feet. Comes a snowstorm, you can get a little heat. Comes love, nothing can be done. Comes a fire, then you know just what to do. Blow a tire, you can buy another shoe. Comes love, nothing can be done. Don't try hiding, 'cause there isn't any use. You'll start sliding when your heart turns on the juice. Comes a headache, you can lose it in a day. Comes a toothache, see your dentist right away. Comes love, nothing can be done. Comes a heat wave, you can run into the shore. Comes a bailiff, you can hide behind the door. Comes love, nothing can be done. Comes the measles, you can quarantine the room. Comes a mousey, you can chase him with a broom. Comes love, nothing can be done. That's all, brother, if you've ever been in love. That's all, brother, you know just what I'm thinking of. Comes a nightmare, you can always stay awake. Comes depression, you may get another break. Comes love, nothing can be done. You know just what I'm thinking of. Comes a nightmare, you can always stay awake. Comes depression, you may get another break. Comes love, nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be done.
Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the music and the artwork connection.